Dear friends, welcome to this new video in the Apocalypse in Art cycle of the Apocalyptissimo YouTube channel. Today I would like to introduce you to the triptych of St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist, also known as the altarpiece of the two St. Johns, by the painter Hans Memling, whose inner right-hand panel is dedicated to the Apocalypse. First, a few words about the painter himself. Hans Memling was a German painter in the Flemish style. He was born in Germany in the area of Mainz around 1435-1440. He became a citizen of Bruges in 1465. Bruges is located in Flanders in today's Belgium. Memling lived in Bruges until his death in 1494. At the time, Bruges was one of the largest cities in the county of Flanders. It had become prosperous, thanks in particular to the cloth trade. It was home to court officials, members of the clergy, wealthy merchants and wealthy citizens, and many works of art were commissioned, especially for hotels, chapels, and hospitals. Memling was one of the greatest exponents of Bruges painting in the 15th century alongside Jan van Eyck and the so-called Flemish primitives. Before moving to Bruges, Memling worked in Brussels in the workshop of his master, Roger van der Weyden, not as an apprentice, but as a freelancer. It was only after van der Weyden's death in 1464 that he opened his own workshop. There are stylistic similarities indicating a close relationship between the two painters. However, Memling went on to develop his own style marked by serenity and gentleness. Around 100 works by Memling are known or attributed to him or his workshop, including altarpieces, representations of the Virgin, and a large gallery of portraits. Today we are going to look at one of Memling's best known works, the triptych of St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist, or altarpiece of the two St. Johns, so called because of the two side panels of the altarpiece representing St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist. It was painted between 1474 and 1479. It is currently on display at the Memling Museum in Bruges, housed in the former St. John's Hospital, for which it was originally created. The hospital had John the Baptist and John the Evangelist as its patron saint. Here is an overview of the triptych when it is open. The triptych was commissioned by the directors of the St. John's Hospital in Bruges for the main altar of the hospital church when the new apse was built in 1473-1474. Memling was commissioned to do the work in 1475. The donors are depicted on the outer flaps of the triptych. They are visible when the triptych is in the closed position. The triptych is signed and dated 1479. It is one of the largest works painted by Memling, measuring 3.5 meters wide and 1.9 meter high. In this cycle, we shall focus on the inner right-hand side of the triptych, the theme of which is the Apocalypse. First of all, the Apocalypse has long been represented pictorially, particularly in magnificent medieval illuminations, such as the famous Beatus, so called because they were painted on manuscripts of the commentary on the Apocalypse by Beatus de Liébana, a Spanish monk. Here is an example. In the 14th century, we should of course mention the Angers tapestry, an impressive collection of tapestries representing various scenes of the Apocalypse. It is now housed in the Angers Castle in western France. Memling's work, which we are looking at here, is original in that it brings together several scenes from the Apocalypse on the same canvas. In the foreground, we see John the Evangelist. He's exiled on the island of Patmos. He's holding a book, a quill, and an inkwell. He's looking up to heaven and has a vision of the Apocalypse. The painting presents various episodes from chapters 4 to chapter 12 of the book of Revelation. At the top left, we see God the Father surrounded by a rainbow, seated on the throne under a canopy of stones supported by columns, surrounded by the 4 living creatures, the lion, the bull, the Son of Man, and the eagle, each of whom has 6 wings. The scene corresponds to the vision of God's throne in chapters 4 and 5 of Revelation. God is dressed in red and green, his hands and face enveloped in a greenish halo. This corresponds to the description in the book of Revelation, which mentions at chapter 4, like a vision of jasper and carnelian. God's right hand is resting on a book sealed with 7 seals. On the left, we see a lamb standing on its hind legs, representing Christ. We see 7 horns on his head. However, Memling did not paint him with 7 eyes, perhaps because of the difficulty of depicting Christ in this way. Nor did he depict the 4 living creatures with eyes in front and behind. Around the canopy are 7 lamps of fire representing the Holy Spirit. Flames shoot out from the rainbow inside. God's throne is surrounded by 24 seated elders, of whom only 13 are visible. They are dressed in white, wear golden crowns, and play various musical instruments. The throne is on a damask carpet and rests on a barely visible blue surface that is the crystal sea mentioned by Revelation at chapter 4. The whole is surrounded by a second circle with a rainbow halo, inside which black angels hang, while outside angels announce events by playing various wind instruments. They are the 7 angels who receive the trumpets at the breaking of the 7th seal. Between the 2 rainbows stands an angel in a green dalmatic, pointing with his right hand to the sealed book, saying to John, "Who is worthy to open the seals?" In the text of Revelation, the Lamb takes the sealed book from the hand of the Father, first breaks the first 4 seals, and then appear 4 horsemen that we see above John. Memling even painted their reflection in the water. The order of the riders, each on a small island, can be read from left to right. First, a white rider with a crown on a white horse, shooting an arrow backwards. In video number 19 of the Apocalypse for Dummies cycle, I explained that the white horseman is probably a Christological figure. Second, a rider in a black breastplate, armed with a sword on the light brown horse. In the Apocalypse, it is a red horse. The horseman represents the plague of war. Third, a figure dressed in a long toga carrying scales on a black horse. He symbolizes the plague of famine. And 4, a greenish horse ridden by Death, whose head looks like a skull with just a few hairs left. Death is followed by the head of a flaming monster with human bodies writhing in pain in its mouth. It is Hades, the abode of the dead. It should be noted that Memling did not depict the events linked to the breaking of the fifth seal, that is, the souls of the martyrs under the altar in heaven, crying out, "How long, holy and truthful Master, do you not judge and do justice to our blood on the inhabitants of the earth?" He did, however, depict the sixth seal, which causes the sun to eclipse and the stars to fall. Towards the middle of the painting, on the right, near Death, 3 people, including a king, are hiding in a cave. This corresponds to verses 15 to 17 of chapter 6. Then the kings of the earth and the magnates and the generals and the rich and the powerful, and everyone, slave and free, hid in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, calling to the mountains and rocks, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" We can also see hail and fire falling from the sky, grass burning, this is the plague of the first trumpet, a fiery rock falling into the sea, and burning ships, second trumpet. A star falling like a torch on the spring that it poisons, third trumpet. This last scene is located on the right-hand edge. The corpse lies at the foot of the quadrangular well. On the peninsula to the right, we see a star bearing a star sign and a key. This is the key to the abyss, from which smoke is rising and from which locusts are escaping. They are represented as winged horses with crowned human heads. One of the horses is ridden by Abaddon, the angel of the abyss. These are the events that take place at the sounding of the fifth trumpet, chapter 9. Opposite, we see an army of soldiers and horsemen. The horses have fire-breathing lion heads and snake-headed tails. These are the events corresponding to the sixth trumpet. We also see the colossal angel of Revelation chapter 10. He's surrounded by a rainbow, and his legs are like pillars of fire. He holds a small book in his left hand. After 7 thunderclaps, represented as 7 explosions in the cloud above the arch, the angel raises his right hand to heaven, pronounces an oath, "No more delay," and hands the book to John, who is waiting a little further along the shore, his arms outstretched. High in the sky, the Virgin Mary appears with the moon beneath her feet and the child Jesus above her. She is threatened by the 7-headed fire-red dragon that is approaching her to devour the child at birth. But the child escapes the dragon by ascending into heaven. This scene is recounted in chapter 12 of the Apocalypse. It should be noted that the scenes depicted by Memling concern chapters 4 to 12 of Revelation, with the exception of the 5th seal and the episode of the 2 witnesses in chapter 11. Memling did not depict the scenes from chapters 13 to 22, in particular the heavenly Jerusalem. However, the representation of the Apocalypse in this form is a novelty in the history of painting. Before Memling, there was hardly ever a depiction in which several scenes of Revelation were shown simultaneously before the eyes of John and without subdivision. Dear friends, if you happen to pass by Bruges, be sure to visit the Memling Museum, where you can see, among other things, this superb triptych, which is a true masterpiece. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please don't forget to click on the thumbs up icon to show your appreciation. I see you soon for new videos on the Apocalypse in Art cycle.